Welcome to Vancouver Business Network, where entrepreneurs and small business owners learn, network, and grow. I am Roger Killen, the organizer of Vancouver Business Network. The Vancouver Business Network's weekly workshop for entrepreneurs is brought to you by TELUS Business, the fastest and most reliable pure fiber broadband network in Metro Vancouver. Our speaker is Deborah Janz-Kriger, and her workshop is titled Rock the Road Warrior Lifestyle. Deborah is a leading international branding and marketing expert. She delivers strong results for her clients by using a blend of creative, engaging, and disruptive solutions. Deborah has inspired, entertained, and empowered audiences with her unique ability to demystify best-of-breed brand building with the latest and most relevant technology tools. Deborah hails from Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada. When not in front of her laptop, you'll find her on a mountain trail or below sea level commuting with sharks or turtles in a far-off land. Let's put our hands together and give Deborah a warm Vancouver Business Network welcome.
Thank you. Happy New Year, and welcome to Rock the Road Warrior Lifestyle. Nothing like starting with a tongue twister. My name is Deborah Janz. I own Impact Marketing International, and we help connect organizations with their international marketplaces through inbound marketing and through training. I'm not really here to promote my business today. I have never done this talk before. I'm here because I love travel. I've always loved travel, and that's why my brother actually recommended to Roger to talk to me about this topic. I love airports, I love taxis, I love hotels. I even love airplane food. I love the little bottles in the hotel rooms. I love it when they give you slippers. I love travel. And so I'm really excited to share with you what I've learned through doing a lot of travel and through growing my business internationally. I'm using because I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh yeah, I'm still learning. So I'm still learning a lot about travel, about the world. Obviously, I haven't been everywhere. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to somebody at the break who was telling me that in England, they don't have a kidney bank, but they do have a liver pool. Oh. I had to do it. So we're going to cover health and connection, not just connection like Wi-Fi connection, but staying connected with your clients who are international, staying connected with your family while you're traveling, for business especially. Accommodations and transportation, we're going to talk a little bit about some tips and tricks there and some tools that we use. And what it's like to work remotely, or if you're just still looking into setting up your business or growing your business internationally, I'll share some things that I've learned from building our business globally. But I'm going to start with a story. I woke up one morning and it was still dark. It was early. It was pouring rain. And my toes were freezing because there was a hole at the foot of my bed in the tent trailer that I was living in. Oh, I practiced this so many times and not cried. I was shuddering at the thought that I had to take the Rubbermaid totes off the other bed and get them out of the rain somewhere so that my two young boys, 4 and 6, could stay with me that night. It wasn't emotional, actually. It was an adventure. I had dreamed my whole life of traveling. And with that desire, I thought I would get into the travel industry. And so I wanted to be a flight attendant, but then I got married. I got pregnant 3 months later, and it didn't seem really practical for me to be a flight attendant and traveling all over the world. So instead, I shifted gears and I became a travel agent. As a second income, that worked. It was okay. But on my own, it wasn't enough to cover it. I had no concept of or realization that I was able to get any kind of financial support. So I was having to live in a tent trailer. I was so grateful that actually my boss's son had this tent trailer that I could live in for the summer. I was 27 years old. I've got these young kids and felt like, okay, I've got a roof over my head and I can have my kids overnight. This is amazing. Eventually I got a job with Budget Rent-A-Car of Canada. I got a corporate account executive job. It was a huge leap for me. I felt like I had just hit the mother lode. I had an expense account, I had benefits, I had a laptop and a cell phone that they gave me. I had to get a new car because I was driving such a dump of a car, and they're like, you cannot represent us in your Volkswagen Fox. So I had to get a new car. What a bummer. And I was able to get into a place that I could have my kids, and I was able to have my kids in my own home. I got custody throughout the school year, and we switched off during the summer. So I was every other weekend during the summer, and we switched off during the school year. And so I was able to raise my boys under my own roof. But with that lovely, comfy corporate job, I was never totally content. I always had side projects. This was one of them. It was the Sugar Shack. You may have seen it at the Symphony of Fire or the Cloverdale rodeo. And I purchased this with another investor. I thought it'd be so much fun to run a business with my kids. It was not fun at all. But that's another story. I was dabbling in side businesses, and eventually it got so distracted by my side businesses, I got fired. And so then I was back to the drawing board, and I could either try and go get another job with a big old fired on my resume, or I could, what I thought was the easy route. I was really mistaken about how hard it is to grow your own business. But I took that route to grow my own business. And to make a long story short, you'll hear bits and pieces of that story as we go along. But I'm now able to offer consulting to heads of organizations around the world. I speak internationally. I have a beautiful team. They've changed a little bit since this photo was taken, but we have 4 full-time employees. We have about a dozen contractors that range from working with us daily to working very occasional. Most of them are right here in BC. I started by doing all my outsourcing overseas, and so we still have one. I have one, Arif, who is, Rod's worked with Arif as well in Bangladesh, and he's just a lovely guy who helps us with administration help. So we've grown to have this international business, and I love my job. So if I could summarize who I am a mother first. I love this picture because it depicts travel, my boys, and the outdoors, which I love. We are over 20,000 feet high on the Salcantay Pass, which is on your way. You go up before you go down to Machu Picchu in Peru. It's 3,000 feet higher in elevation than Everest Base Camp. So a great experience with my boys. I was programming Commodore 64 computers when I was 6 or 7 years old. So I'm a geek. And yes, I'm old. I turned 50 this year. Put it out there. We'll see when you see this. It might be many years later, maybe older. So programming computers, love technology, love figuring it out how technology can work for us, and being passionate about sales and marketing. It's just been a marriage made in heaven for me. Travel, I came by naturally. This is my parents getting on a private jet. My brother and I dropped them off there a few weeks ago, and I've been traveling my whole life. And then productivity. I'm a productivity junkie. I love making systems work more efficiently. So Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Work Week. This book is tattered at home, and I have a second copy that I've also read for the updates. And of course, Ever the Entrepreneur. And I really believe, this journey has been full of struggles, and there's still struggles. There always is. And whenever I kind of come up against those barriers, that's when the biggest breakthrough is always about to happen. Isn't it true? I see you shaking, you're nodding your heads, right? And this quote was actually from Brené Brown, and I saw it somewhere else where they said, the obstacle is the way. And those things that you keep procrastinating, that's usually the doorway to your biggest opportunity. I'll say it again, I'm still learning. So as a matter of fact, the last 5 years, my travel has been increasing significantly. In the last school year, I measure by school years because we work with a lot of international schools overseas. And in the last school year, I traveled close to 4 months of the school year. That would have been fine, except I had a trip in February. The trip was supposed to be 2.5 weeks in Singapore. I had a quick sales call in Malaysia, and then I had 2 weeks in Bangkok. these 2-week projects are intense. So I need that buffer to kind of reorganize and rest and recoup and get ready for the next trip. I get to Malaysia to do, it was actually a sales call for a client who had just gotten in touch with me, and I said, yeah, it's 75 bucks, I'll be there. Couple nights hotel, doesn't matter to me. Went over and met their board of directors. It was amazing. We got the deal. I get a call from Bangkok. My client says, you can't come here. We're not ready. We need to get more people out to your focus groups and to answer the surveys before you show up. And after I stopped flipping my lid on my client, I said, give me an hour. I'll call you back. I'll see what I can do. These are very complicated trips because people who are making bookings and everything. So I start making phone calls. I figure it out, get back on the line with her, and I go, look, I'm coming back in June. I've been able to rearrange everything. This is going to be the cost if this is really what you want to do. She says, yeah, I'll do it. So cool. I get to go home after 3 weeks instead of 5 weeks. So that's nice. And I'm tacking that on to my next trip. Well, come June, I go on this trip. But I didn't plan very well because in my haste, I slammed these projects together. I worked from the day after I arrived, straight through to a Saturday, which I traveled, a Sunday, which I should have been off. My client called from Shanghai and said, I want to see you. So I ended up working on the Sunday and through another straight 2 weeks. I was exhausted. I knew I was on the edge. I knew that I was kind of walking a real thin line with my health. I made sure I got at least 7 hours of sleep every night. I drank tons of water. I took my vitamins religiously, which I'd never done before in my life. And I did all of the right things, but I still knew I was pushing it. And some of you health people might be able to help me figure out what happened to me. Sure enough, the day I got home, first of all, I went into atrial fibrillation. I was in emergency that night. I've had AFib before, but not for like 8 years. And I've now had it another time since then. So something was thrown off course in the burnout. I'm just calling it burnout. For the course of the next 2 months, I could hardly work. I relate it most closely to the symptoms of having a concussion from what I've heard from my sister-in-law who's had concussions. I couldn't think. I had a fog. I could look at my computer for a couple hours at a time, but minimum requirement. If I hadn't had a team at that point, honestly, I'm not sure I'd have a job right now. I can't emphasize the importance of planning for your trip and planning some buffer into your trips, your business trips, to stay healthy. Have any of you done the grouse grind? Quite a few people, more than half. So one day I'm on the grouse grind and I'm hiking up the stinking trail. Sweaty people in front of me, behind me, 80-year-olds passing me. My legs are burning. I'm sweating. It's gross. There's bugs. And I look up to the left and there's a break in the trees. And I can see the reservoir, I guess it is, that you can see through the trees, and the mountains going on forever, and they're gorgeous, and the blue sky, and our green trees that we're so fortunate to have here in BC. And so this came to me, that we focus so much on the trail that we forget to look up and see the view. So here I am in Bangkok, of all places. I'm on Facebook and I see it's June here. It's beautiful. My friends and family are enjoying the beach and the water, and I have other friends posting on Facebook that they're in Mexico with their families, and I'm feeling tortured inside that I'm not getting to enjoy those experiences. I'm jealous. And I'm in Bangkok, Thailand, for crying out loud. It's crazy. And so I'm learning, and the success story here is I just got back from a great trip. I went to Tokyo, Malaysia, Tanzania, Africa, London, and came home. I'm healthy, had lots of fun, and managed to pace myself a little better. But of course, I am still learning. I relate planning and preparing for a trip the same way I plan and prepare for a race or a Tough Mudder. I did 7 Tough Mudders. Some of them I trained really well. I had a great race and my recovery was fantastic. Other ones I got a bit lazy. I didn't train well, but it was a grueling experience and it took me forever to recover. Travel is the same way. The more you put into that prep to the training portion, the better your business trip is going to be and the better your recovery is going to be when you get home. And that prep part, that training part, is not just about practicing your presentations and going over that stuff and packing. It's also just making sure that you schedule out the materials that you need for the time leading up to your trip. All of you have been on some kind of travel, vacation or otherwise, and you know how tense it gets right before you go on a trip. And it's so hard when you're leaving on a business trip and you're leaving your loved ones behind and you're like, I can't look at you, I can't talk to you, I've got things to print, I've got things to prepare, I've got to pack, I've got to run to the drugstore. So pace all of those things out so that you have peace before you leave the people you love behind. Also, plan your trip. I plan a little meticulously. I know not everybody's going to do this, but I look at every day of my trip. When I arrive, am I going to have time to go to the gym? Because if I go to the gym the day I arrive, I'm going to feel great. And it's going to be a great start to my trip and taking care of myself from the time I get there. I look whether I'm going to have coffee in the room. I'll bring along Starbucks Via. If they're not going to have coffee, a lot of Asian countries, China, they either have bad coffee or they have tea. Great tea. I'm a coffee drinker. So I think about all those things. Am I going to be getting up so early that I want to have coffee in the morning? Or am I going to want to exercise in the morning or just meditate, shower, and get out the door? I think about these things. When am I going to have my big meal of the day? This is all about health. The business stuff, yes, you have to have your presentations planned and all of that. But I also think about the cadence of my days. And I also plan about how I'm going to come home or re-enter or recover from my trip and how I'm going to reconnect with my business, my clients, and my family. Let's dive right into jet lag topic because this is really the hottest topic. So I'm at a conference a couple of years ago with my brother-in-law, who is also works with international education. And actually, he and this guy are talking. They're not even paying any attention to me. He was supposed to be introducing me, and they got chattering about things. But this guy, other guy, I don't remember his name. I should, because he's be a really great lead for me. But anyway, he runs this big education association. He lives in Hong Kong. And he had just come to San Francisco from Hong Kong. Then he had to go to London after this trip. Then he had to go back to Dallas. Then he was going to Cairo, then to Bangkok, then back to Hong Kong. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. I thought my travel was crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And so I interrupted them from their little chit chat and said, hey guys, you got to tell me, how do you deal with jet lag? Because I was getting tired of coming home and spending 2 weeks just feeling like I was recovering from jet lag. And if I took my team with me, we were another 2 weeks out of function when we got back from these trips. So I asked them, what's the deal? They looked at each other. They looked at me. They said in unison, what jet lag? This hit me like a ton of bricks. So some people, that might just, they might call it denial. I have colleagues and friends that call it denial. I don't care what you call it. It so works. And I just went, of course that's what you have to do. If I plan to have jet lag for 2 weeks to give myself 2 weeks to recover from my trip, I will take 2 weeks to recover from my trip. But if I say I'm going to have a buffer of a day and then I'm going to get back to work to at least some capacity, I'm going to be engaged with people. Hey, when I was sitting over there, I'm breathing slow, I'm relaxing. Now I'm up in front of you and I'm like, blah! Because when you're on and you have to be on, you will be, right? And so if you plan for it, you will recover much faster. Hydrate. So the number one thing to get over jet lag is mind over matter. Trick yourself the best you can. Hydrate is the next most important thing. I believe the reason people get sick from flying isn't because of a bunch of foreign germs in the air, and it's not even because of recycled air. It might be because of the dry air that's recycled, but really it's a lack of hydration. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Get past security, buy 2 big bottles of water, throw them in your pack, make sure you drink them, and every time that flight attendant comes by, say, yes, I'll have a glass of water. Not alcohol, by the way, that doesn't count. Even in business class, even if it's free, drink water, drink lots of it. Upgrade if you can. I have mostly flown economy in my life. I've had a couple treats here and there. On one particular business trip, I was in Shanghai. I'd been working hard. I was tired. I flew then through Guangzhou Airport, and I was sick. I had a fever, And I was just like, oh no, I hope they don't have those fever cameras in the airport that I'm going to end up in a quarantine somewhere, right? And I had a nice long layover. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to the massage chair. I'm going to go pay for the lounge. I had a lounge access pass, actually through Researce, they have a thing. So I'm like, okay, I'll go in the lounge. I'll drink some tea, trying to be healthy. I step onto the plane. And of course, you enter the plane right in business class. All these big, gorgeous seats. Then you go a little further, you're in premium economy, and then they have like premium plus. And the seats, as they go back, they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller till I get way back to the back of the bus where I get to sit, and my knee is pushed. I'm 5'7", I'm not that tall, I've got big heels on. But my knees are pushing the front of the seat. I take my phone and I take a picture of my knees and I send a text to my fiance, his name's Mike, and I go, never again. And I hit send. Right as I hit send, I'm like, I think I just heard them say you could upgrade. They're offering upgrades. So I ding dong, call the flight attendant. She comes over and I ask about the situation. It's $1,200 US to upgrade. And I'm just going, oh my gosh, that's like 1,600 Canadian. There's no way. And she goes, well, if you change your mind, let me know. After the long debate and communicating with Mike at home, he's like, you just got to do this. Just take care of yourself, spoil yourself. You deserve it. Easy for him to say, right? This is coming out of my business account. So I go for the upgrade. She says, oh, leave your stuff here. We'll take care of you. And I go and I get into the very front seat in the plane. And this lovely flight attendant comes up and she says, hello, my name is Tiffany. How shall I address you? And I said, well, my name's Deborah. You can call me Deborah. Great, Deborah, why don't we get those shoes off your feet? I'm like, oh my goodness, this is how I meant to travel. This is fabulous. Then she says, what's your beverage of choice? So if you give me a hot water with lemon and keep that cup full all the way home, I am going to be happy. We're going to get along really well. She did that. I got home. I wasn't sick. I drank water all the way home. I peed when I had to pee because I didn't have to crawl over anybody. The bathroom was a little bigger and cleaner. So it's really worthwhile if you can. I have a policy at work. I feel like whatever I'm entitled to, all of my staff are entitled to. So we don't fly business class. I do have clients that pay for my projects and then they pay for my business class ticket. But when we all go to a conference, we now all fly premium economy. We all upgrade and it's well worth it because we lose less in productivity hours when we come home. Whether or not you're upgrading, where to sit on a plane. I love sitting by a window because I love to rest my head and go to sleep and get a little distance from the person beside me. And I love the scenery out the window, as you saw in my first picture on my first slide. I love the scenery. However, if you're drinking lots of water, you're going to have to be climbing over people and sometimes they're sleeping and you feel awkward. And so what do? You don't drink water. Also, you give yourself a little bit of extra leg room, usually if you sit on the aisle, because you're less hesitant to put things up above. And so you give yourself a bit more foot room and use the up. Bulkheads are great. Emergency seats are better. If you do select an emergency seat, always look at the map of the plane. Sometimes they'll change the aircraft on you, so it's not a sure thing. But you don't want to sit at the row right in front of an emergency row because they don't recline. So make sure you're sitting in the back emergency row if there's two sets. As I mentioned before about buffering and planning. So when I arrive a place, I always try and go a day early. I know sometimes I've flown places and had a meeting and come home the same day or the next day as well. I'm talking about a little bit longer haul flights here and trips, but I go a day early for a few reasons. One, I usually get to exercise, but I also walk around my neighborhood and kind of get used to it and just get a real safe feeling so I know that I can navigate. I call myself a grocery store tourist because I love seeing the weird things that other cultures eat, and I will eat them. I'm totally all for it. But I also like to know where a 7-Eleven is. So I find it where those things are. I usually pick up some oatmeal packets, things that you can make out of a coffee maker with hot water or a kettle. So I have oatmeal in my room. I pick up some fruit. And I pick up a big jug, a 3-liter or a 5-liter jug of water. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. It's a very important rule to stay healthy. And on my way back, I give myself a 1-day buffer as well. And this isn't just about jet lag. This is about acclimatizing. If we're in this weather and then you go to 35 degrees Celsius weather, 100% humidity, you need some time so that you don't show up just totally disheveled. I did that when my first overseas trip showed up and I was just dripping. So you need some time to just kind of get used to the temperature as well as the time zone. Some great apps. Now there are so many exercise apps and everybody has their own preference, but the lovely thing about apps, I love Sworkit. I was using it regularly until they wanted me to pay and then I jammed out, but now it's the new year. So I'm kind of shopping again and I'm gonna invest in one of these apps for real. But the thing is they use almost no equipment, sometimes a chair to do step-ups or to do triceps, but it's a great way to maintain consistency and stay exercising throughout your trip. I'm a big fan of meditation, something I really only started a few years ago, but it's something that gives you peace and focus and grounding no matter where you are in the world. This little song is from the Insight Timer, which is the app I use most now. They have all different kinds of programs, or you can just use the timer for your 10 minutes, even 10 minutes a day is great. I believe that meditation really helped my brain recover from whatever that was that happened to me in the spring. And have any of you heard of binaural beats? So binaural beats help change the waves in your brain. I love this particular app, Brainwave, because it has 35 different programs and they're really easy to figure out if you're not really into this stuff. So like there's one called Espresso that just gets you awake right away. My favorite one is Power Nap. Somehow I can listen to that and I am asleep and awake in 30 minutes and I feel great. They have ones for deep sleep. They have ones for hangover, which is probably good also for the feeling of jet lag is very similar to hangover. And so there's a lot of different programs in there. The design is terrible. It looks awful. They need a graphic designer. If you know a great app graphic designer, they are an ideal client for you. Sleep Cycle is a program that I use as an alarm clock. You likely know this when you go to sleep. You start in light sleep, you go to REM, you go to deep sleep, back up to REM, back up to light, and this happens all night long. Sometimes if you're gonna wake up, it's usually in that light sleep period. If your alarm wakes you up in the middle of deep sleep or REM sleep, that's when you feel like you've been hit by a truck and you're just so tired all day long. But if you wake up during light sleep, you actually feel pretty good when you wake up. There's apps, Sleep Cycle is one of them. There's other ones out there that wake you up in the natural rhythm of your sleep. So they wake you up when you're in that lighter sleep. So if I used it even in Boston, I knew I was going to be getting up 3 hours earlier in Boston. And so to wake up at that lighter time of my sleep just helped me feel much fresher for the day. Wi-Fi is your friend when traveling big time. Most of my travels until quite recently, I put my phone into airplane mode when I arrived somewhere and I never took it out. I used Wi-Fi only, and so you can do that. However, I now buy a SIM card at the airport when I arrive, everywhere I go. There's often stalls right by the gates when you arrive. Exits to the right. Sometimes they're down by the luggage and sometimes they're after you get through the luggage. It's cheap. It just gives you such peace of mind that you can get off airplane mode if you're lost and you want to use your map, or you're waiting for your Uber driver and you get out of Wi-Fi range, those kinds of things, or just connecting in case of emergency. So it is a little bit of extra security. There are some apps that really don't work well in other countries. Licensing agreements are different even between Canada and the US. Sometimes the licensing agreements are different. And so your music apps often won't work. I've tried to use Spotify and Google Play in other countries and not had them work. iTunes, I just prefer iTunes. How many of you are on Apple iPhone? How many of you are on Samsung? Something else? Okay, good. So most of you are on Apple. I know they have similar things on Samsung and Android. I'm just not as familiar with them. So iTunes is great because you can actually download your music and then you'll have it everywhere you go. Netflix is another one that is really challenging. I was using somebody else's account for a while, and then I got to China and I realized they had changed the password or something and I couldn't get in. So it was a nightmare for me to reconnect and set up a Canadian account in China. I managed to do it, but if you're not techie, don't even think about it. Skype. Everybody knows Skype, right? Skype is used around the world. It's such a great connection tool for people around the world. We have a video-only policy at work for our clients and for our colleagues that we get to see each other. But for travel, it's that if you do the upgrade, I think it's about $35 a year and you can get a phone number. This makes all the difference in your subscription. You get a phone number. If you work with clients in the US, this is great. I have a 206 number. So if you're working with US clients, you can give them that US number. Now that you have a phone number, you can dial out from there. You can also forward that number to your cell phone. So when you're home and if you are using it on your website, you can still pick up that call on your cell phone. Now, when you're traveling, you can forward your cell phone to your Skype line. And so every time you're connected to Wi-Fi, your phone rings. I used this for years before I started picking up SIM cards. And so you could only talk to me when I was connected to Wi-Fi, which is probably safer anyway. VPNs is a little bit of technology. Those of you who travel a lot internationally will be familiar with them. In China, you can't use Google, you can't use Facebook. You're so limited to, I mean, cut my arms off, right? My business, I'm in a digital marketing business and I can't access my tools by email. So a VPN basically tricks the network into thinking you're logging on from somewhere else in the world. So I can be in China and log in as though I'm from Canada. I'm gonna have you wait because I'm trying to talk so fast to get everything out right now. Sure. So packing. Every travel expert you talk to is going to tell you, don't check your luggage in. I check my luggage in. Shorter trips, you know, maybe I'll go with a carry-on, but the reality is I don't want to limit shoes. I have to have shoes. They take up a lot of space, but also especially if you stop somewhere and you have a layover somewhere, juggling all this stuff and not having free hands and getting onto the airplane and then trying to shove everything, it's just awkward to me. And I have traveled a lot. I have lost a bag once, I think it was 12, and it was in Tennessee. I've had bags misplaced 3 other times. They've always come back to me in perfect condition. So I'm just a believer, and I like the convenience of not having to worry if I've got 2 ounces or whatever in my bag. So do what you want, but I like to just check my baggage. You've probably heard about rolling your clothes. And this is great for casual trips because you can roll everything up individually and it might help a little bit with wrinkles. But when you're bringing dresses and pants and blazers, it sometimes will get things still too wrinkled if you're putting them in these little balls. So I do what I call bailing. I lay everything on the bed with the longest, most susceptible to wrinkle items first. So pants, dresses on the bottom, blazers, and the more casual things inside, and then just do it in like 2 or 3, and throw them in my bag. It seems to prevent wrinkles. Most places have an ironing board anyway, so it's not the end of the world. I have traveled for up to 7 weeks at a time, and I do not have 7 weeks worth of underwear, I assure you. So I do laundry when I travel. Airbnb is great because you have washer and dryer. I bring about 10 days max, no matter how long I'm traveling. I bring about 10 days worth of clothes and things that I'm gonna need. Most places in the world have expats, and expats have amazing services that will come pick up your laundry. I never use hotel bought laundry because it is ridiculously, I mean, that pair of underwear now costs you like $15 for just wash and dry. It's crazy. But there's services that come pick it up, and at your hotel, they bring it back and it's all folded and it's really lovely and it's cheap. Most frequently forgotten items for me, brush, toothbrush. I'd probably add deodorant in there. So because I travel as frequently as I do, I keep a sundry bag packed with toothbrush, brush, toothpaste, a small bottle of perfume, deodorant, a couple other little things, an extra, a duplicate of mascara, eyeliner, a little bit of makeup, and that just stays up in my travel bin in my closet, so I can just grab it and go. It's really handy for weekends and stuff. You can be a little more spontaneous having that little pack ready to go. Devices to bring along with you, obviously your smartphone. I have a laptop about the exact same size as Roger's here, a nice small one so that it's easy to pack. I also picked one with the longest battery life I could find. If you're going to be on long flights and you've got a lot of work to do, it really sucks when you run out of battery power. I also use a Wi-Fi hub that I bring along with me. Thank you. This little bad boy, you can charge it up just through a USB, and it provides you Wi-Fi connection. It's about between 10 and 15 bucks a day, but I can connect my whole team on here, or have, I think, up to 10 people connected to this. So it's a great backup if you're going to be doing meetings somewhere. You never want to be stuck somewhere without Wi-Fi. You know, when you're just we're so dependent on the cloud, and all of a sudden you don't have it. So it's heavy and it's bulky, and I bring it with me. Also, one thing about carry-on, I carry my jewelry now in my carry-on luggage. Someone made this recommendation on some blog I was reading, and I went, oh, that's brilliant. Because if there is one thing I don't want to disappear, that I'd like to keep close to me, it's my jewelry. I also bring a little speaker. It makes me feel a little bit more at home when I get to play my music in the morning and when I get back to my hotel in the evening. Don't forget your converters. I shopped all over Kuala Lumpur looking for a converter. It was a pain. One of my favorite apps is called Pocketless. I like it partly for the cute little icons that they provide, but also it's just so handy. And when you make a list, you can shake it and it kind of buzzes, and then they all go into alphabetical order, which is really cool. But I use it for my packing list, and this gets revised as I go along. I'm not going to give you my packing list, and I'll bore all the men, first of all. If any of you women would like to have it for me, I'm happy to send it afterwards. I have one for what I'm taking on a long flight on the airplane, as well as a long trip and a shorter business trip. And exactly, I come home, and as I'm unpacking my bag, I make different piles. Used it, didn't use it, didn't need it. And then I refine my list every time, and I'm getting better and better all the time, but I still carry a big suitcase. Someone was asking what an e-reader was, and what a Kobo and a Kindle was. Kobo and Kindles are e-readers. I don't carry them with me. I don't need the extra device, but I do have a membership to Kobo, and so I buy books, and I used to carry books. I am an avid reader, so I could go and be carrying 5 heavy books with me everywhere I went. I mean, one of the reasons I love flying is uninterrupted reading time, right? So I just make sure your books are downloaded onto your hard drive, because otherwise it's still tapping into the cloud, and not all planes have Wi-Fi, believe it or not, and when they do, it's usually not that good. So make sure you download what you need onto your laptop before you get onto a plane. Audible is audiobooks. Virtually every book you can think of is on there. I love it for running, for traveling. I don't listen to it on the airplanes because I feel like I have to turn it up so loud it might wreck my ears. I'd be curious what you think of XE, but XE is a currency exchange app that I love when I'm traveling around. It has 10 different currencies on it. It's great, you know, you're just at a stopover at an airport in some random country, and you can see how much you're actually paying for that Kit Kat bar. Your Apple Wallet, Samsung Wallet, Android Wallet, these are so handy. I didn't use them forever, and then somehow I got tricked into putting a hotel itinerary on there, and it carries your Starbucks card, all of your flight itineraries. It puts it all in one handy place, so when you get up to the counter, you don't have to fumble around and try and figure out where the heck that document was that you need to check in. You also download your credit card, and I'm finding more and more in Asia, there are places that don't take cash and don't take credit card. You need some form of digital payment to pay just at regular stores. WeChat Pay is another thing, just keep your eye on this. WeChat is they're owned by Tencent, which is just like one of the most massive companies in the world. But you can actually, I could just give you $50 just person to person through WeChat, let alone being able to charge for your services. So if you work internationally, I think that's a real cool tool that we'll be able to use moving forward. Gamifying travel is always, I think it's fun. But I also think if you're traveling and you're in some cute little shop, maybe nobody knows about it, what a great gift as a fellow business person to give them a great rating. And if you have a terrible experience, I hate slagging other entrepreneurs. However, you're doing your fellow travelers a great disservice if you don't put something on there. So I'm a big believer in rating as you go. Foursquare, I don't use Foursquare that much anymore. They do ratings as well. But Swarm, I love Swarm. Are any of you on Swarm? So Swarm allows you just to check in. You're not rating the places, you're just checking in, making comments. It's kind of like a Facebook platform for travel and entertainment. You can connect with people all over the place, and you can become mayor if you check in somewhere often enough. So they've gamified it, and you get points, and so you can look at the scoreboard every week. I go off and on using it, but I know I'm just going to knock everyone out of the park when I travel, so that tends to be when I use it. Accommodations and transportation. This picture, this is one of my favorite pictures. I was in Zanzibar just a couple months ago and was looking at this beach. The amazing thing about this photo is that behind me was just devastation. I'd come from a hotel and driven through this area of these cinder block homes, we would maybe put a water pump in one of these buildings they were living in. Some of them, many of them didn't have roofs, and we saw mothers nursing their children and hanging on to their cow, literally. It's just amazing the story that a photo doesn't tell and what's happening behind the scenes, which has nothing to do with booking and points. But anyway, for the best fares, international fares, you really want to book ahead. Even North American fares, it's usually best to book ahead. We're so used to hearing about last minute deals that usually applies to a WestJet, Sunwing, Transat, charter flights. If you're going to Mexico, Hawaii, Europe during the summer, certain times of year, you can wait till the last minute. But for your international flights, you usually want to book ahead. We are so adapted to booking online, but the travel agents really are a treasure for a number of reasons. They actually get international flights cheaper most of the time. They buy in bulk and they buy from wholesalers. And you also have to take your own time into consideration. Being that I was a former travel agent, I'm the worst client for travel agents on the planet. But to pay $65, just think, I mean, is it worth 3 hours of your time to hunt and hunt and hunt? And I'm sure you're all spending a lot more than 3 hours when you're going to book your travel. When you grow a team, you must use a travel agent to just keep things consistent and make sure that everybody's abiding by the rules, so it makes sense to get a good corporate travel agent. Try alternative airports. I know this is kind of a pain for those of you that live in Vancouver, but Bellingham is such a treat for flying in anywhere really along the West Coast. You save $150 to $300 right off the bat due to taxes. So I fly Allegiant, I fly Alaska. Alaska matches the fares often of Allegiant, so you can get some really great deals and fly with a little more space on Alaska. But those flights are short, so I don't mind my knees pressing up as much on those short flights. When it comes to points, people talk generally about Airplan, Air Miles, Avion. If you're flying to the States a lot, American Advantage is really the way to go. So it really depends where the bulk of your travel is, but Air Canada is really going to take you anywhere. I haven't always been a big fan because their prices were always so much higher. And then I flew business class. I think a couple of trips ago, it was like, oh my gosh, this is totally different than flying on all of those other, the Asian airlines that I've been flying. Their service is really great. And there's something about just speaking the same language of the people who are serving you. It just makes it a little bit more relaxing. I have done a lot of research on the credit cards. I have over 300,000 Airplan points, so I'm loyal. I use the CIBC Airplan card. You really have to use a credit card if you're ever going to get anything out of your points. But of all the research I've done, American Express always comes up. Number one is the #1 credit card for travel. I'm just not a big Amex fan, but both my fiance and my colleague use the BMO World Elite Air Miles, and holy cow, they build points fast, and we've been traveling on them like crazy. So, and as I've read lots and lots of blogs, this is promoted as the next best card to an American Express. If you're not familiar with Hopper, this is such a great app. Do any of you use Hopper? A few people. So you go in, you put your city pairs, you put your dates, and then you get this lovely calendar that shows you the cheapest dates in green, the most expensive in red, and a couple of them in between. You pick your dates, and then the little bunny tells you whether you should wait till the fare goes down or if you should book now. And if you decide to wait, then a little bling goes on your phone, and it tells you your fare's dropped. Now would be a good time to book. So I love, love, love this app. If you are doing some research and want to find the cheapest flights, I found Cheapo Air to be quite consistent. If you are going to book with them, their service is subpar, shall we say. So I don't necessarily suggest booking with them. I lost several $100s in one case on Cheapo. Low-cost airlines, I'm not afraid to fly. I have no concern, so I fly on every kind of aircraft. I highly recommend using, I'll have a document I can send you with a list of all these airlines and these tips and tools later on. I get to fly on Tropic Air next month in Belize, which is like 4-seater to 8-seater airplanes on small airstrips. I can't wait. One of my favorite apps is Gate Guru, especially if you're in a big airport like Hong Kong or Singapore or even Chicago. It tells you where you can get a massage, if there's people to do a manicure, if there's a Starbucks, and where to get. It helps you navigate. I look on those maps and I have no idea, but this connects to Wi-Fi and you can find your way around an airport. A few other things, hotels.com. I love hotels.com. I try and always book on hotels.com. I just got my notification today that I'm now again qualified as a gold membership level with them. And what that means is, even though they have all these cancellation rules, they don't say this in their policies about being a gold member, but I know they've said absolutely no cancellation, and somehow I'm able to get a cancellation. I get upgraded frequently. They answer the phone right away. The service is really great. If you're using it now and again, I don't know if it's really worth it. But if you're loyal and you travel a lot, every 10th night is free. So of course we use that for our vacation time, and it's really nice. If upgrades are really what you're after, going direct with a particular chain is the best way to go. Marriott Brands has everything from 3 stars up to 5 stars. They've been buying out hotel chains like crazy. They have artsy boutique hotels, all different kinds of brands that they've tied into their brand. IHG and Starwood are the big brands. Tarago is still the best place. Their ads make me crazy, but they are the best place to do some price comparing. And hotels.com, I've only called them on it once, but they will match the rate that you see anywhere else. So then I still get my points, otherwise I wouldn't bother. Airbnb, just be careful. I love Airbnb. It was a little unnerving when I was in Bangkok in the elevator and there was a notice on the wall threatening imprisonment because renting in this building is completely, in Thailand, in all of Thailand, apparently is illegal. So I haven't heard of any nightmare stories. I don't think it's been in the news that anything has actually happened, but just be aware there could be some concerns with Airbnb. By train, how was your train ride? Other than you didn't get to go on the, yeah? I love just the little trip from Vancouver to Seattle on Amtrak. Book ahead, $34 US to go and relax. You get an extra 3.5 hours of your time, and they're Wi-Fi connected. It flips out a little bit around the border and then it comes back. Beautiful scenery along the BC coast and then into the Washington state coast. It's $69 to upgrade. I don't really think it's worth it. And it's funner to socialize a little bit out of the business class seats. I love it so much that, and of course, for my burnout last spring, for my 50th, we decided to hop on a train and go to the Portland, Oregon, do the wine country, and then hopped on another overnight train and went to Los Angeles, got an Airbnb in Venice Beach for a week and hung out, and then we flew back on Allegiant to Bellingham. It's a great trip. It's not always going to take you more time. We think, well, we're going to go on the train, but it's going to take so much time and all the stops. I have always done the flight between Beijing and Shanghai, and then one of my clients said, why are you doing that? And I figured out the time to drive to the airport, early check-in, get on the plane, pick up my luggage, get back to my other hotel was taking all this time for a fraction of cost. I went business class on the bullet train, and I was there like 2 hours faster than I would have been had I flown. So I always consider railway as an option. Cruising isn't generally a business option. However, lots of coaches are doing retreats on cruises, taking your team. I'm thinking about taking my team on maybe a 3-4 night cruise somewhere. It's captive audience for 3-4 days. I love cruise.com. You can sort your data so many different ways, like by price, by location, by duration. And so that's just my favorite app for cruising. Uber's an interesting thing. We've all been complaining we don't have Uber, but Uber's selling out all over the world. They built it to sell it. They are investors and entrepreneurs. And so now they've been bought up by Grab in a lot of markets. Grab is really subpar. I was able to find a trick to get my Uber drivers because they are just the most expensive drivers on the Grab app. And so then I could actually get I got stood up so many times by the regular Grab taxi drivers. I hardly use taxis anymore. One of my clients said, oh, and they're paying for my transportation. They're like, just use taxis. I used the taxi the next morning. He took me totally to the wrong school. I was half an hour late for my first meeting in the morning, and I'm like, you're paying for Uber, that's it. Taxi drivers tend to not use navigation systems. And so that's the biggest difference. They insist that they know where to go. You do not need Wi-Fi to use your map app. If you use Wi-Fi just to find your directions, you can then put it in airplane mode, walk out the door, and as long as you stay on that track, it will keep telling you to turn right, turn left. So that's a little trick that some people don't know. Working remotely. So to build an international business, you need to consider so many things. And I could have probably done the whole talk on this, but my understanding was there was some interest in just like the travel, trips, and tricks and tools. Thank you. How many of you ever considered like being a digital nomad? It's the dream, right? Work from the beach. And so that was really my initial dream. And as my company grew, and then I hired my first 2 employees, I converted my house. I was living in a small townhouse at the time. I converted it to an office. I still slept in my bedroom, but really the rest of the place was an office all day long. 3 or 4 days a week, I was meeting with my team. Now, the mindset of a digital nomad is not having employees in a brick and mortar location, let alone your home. And I felt my dream slipping through my fingers. When I was on that project in Singapore last year, I was doing a project on research on corporate culture. And I came across a lot of data on what they call a ROE, results only work environment, where you don't track people's hours to pay them. So my employees, I don't track their hours. I don't care how long it takes them to work. They're really clear on what is expected of them and their deadlines. They must hit deadlines. I don't care when they take vacation. It's totally up to them as long as their work is done. And they're treated the same way I would treat a freelancer or contractor, and they get to live kind of an entrepreneurial lifestyle. Again, I believe whatever policy I want for myself, I have to extend that to my team. So now we found a pretty cool balance where I kind of get to be a bit of a nomad, although this is my home base and I love being close to my family. And we do meet on an average once a month with my team. And I get to travel and do all that as well. All the lumps and bumps I've had in my journey, it's often been just pushing through those difficult times, getting coaching, getting support to get to the next level. This book by Gay Hendricks, The Big Leap, such an impactful book. If you haven't read it, I totally recommend it. Tools to set up your remote office. I have over time tried to avoid using, don't drink Starbucks, don't use the Apple phone, don't buy into Google, use some alternative, don't use Microsoft, use Firefox. I had to go on Firefox. I always had to kind of go with the alternative thing, but I've had to give in because, there's just some great tools. That's why they're so popular. G Suite is so amazing if you're running a team to have storage and calendars and your email, and it hosts our email, so it's our email address that G Suite hosts. This other weird little symbol you're seeing beside there is for Grasshopper. Are any of you familiar with Grasshopper? It is basically your remote phone line. And so you can get a toll-free line, you can get a local phone number, and then you can set all your recordings. And so when you phone in, it'll say, hi, you've reached Impact Marketing International. To reach Deborah, press 2. 2 comes right through to my cell phone. And I can do that for each one of my teammates. So it's really handy. I'm going to leave storage for now. Time zones. We use a tool called timeanddate.com. They have an app, which is a little bit tricky still, but on the laptop computer or your desktop computer, this is a great app for scheduling meetings internationally. I can put 4 different places in the world in, and it comes up with a color-coded grid. Red for when they're sleeping, yellow for when they're awake but not at work, and green for a typical work day. And so I can look when the green lines line up, or usually for me, I'm in the yellow zone while everyone else is in the green zone, and I can schedule a meeting. So it's the best converter I've seen for just figuring out the time zones on the fly. Boomerang, if you're using Gmail, is an excellent tool, even if you're just working locally. So if you just Google Boomerang for Gmail, this will come up. You download it in Chrome, I think, and you can then send your email later. So as entrepreneurs, most of us are working ridiculous hours, sometimes really late at night, weekends, but you don't necessarily want to train your clients to be responding at that time of day. So we have a policy that if you're working with a local client after dinner or on the weekend, that you boomerang it. And that means we're sending it out the next morning. We also, because we work whatever hours we want, if we are going on vacation, we don't say, I'm on vacation, I have limited time, blah, blah, blah. Instead, we just say, I will be returning email on Monday, October 5th. We just give them the time when we will be responding to their voicemail, to their email. Asana is a project management system we wouldn't live without as we've grown as a team. It just helps us stay organized. I can tell you more about that later if you're interested. Password Keeper, even if you're just on your own. A lot of people use different password software to keep track of your passwords. I love Keeper for its share function, and I have administrative rights. I can also knock somebody out. You know, we're just such a big happy family until somebody goes and all of a sudden they have access to all your stuff, and I can go into the admin and just, they're gone. So it's a great tool, and to work with your clients. If you ever are having to share data with your clients, it's your passwords go in, they're encrypted, and you can share them with each other. Our client in Africa might change their password, and then I come up, all of a sudden I have to try and figure out how to change it. It's connected to the phone number, and it's all a nightmare. This way, they're updating it instantly. We have it the next day when we're awake and working. So Password Keeper is a great tool as well. I love this little lady in Phu Quoc in Vietnam. She is farming oysters with her toes. This is a great quote by Chris Sacca, who was an investor in Twitter, Uber, Instagram, and a lot of other things. Great podcasts. If you go into podcasts and search his name and listen to his interviews, he's just got great business information. But I love this quote: your inbox is a to-do list in which anyone can add an action item. This is one of the efficiency things that I'm a little cuckoo about, is keeping your email list. And we use Asana only for talking about tasks. They don't go in email at all. As I mentioned earlier, we have a video mandatory policy. This we've had in place for about a year. I had to push my team. I told them we were going to do this, and then all of a sudden I was having a conversation, and one of my teammates said something about the conversation. I said, well, were you on video? Well, no, I didn't know if that was for sure, la, la, la. I'm like, no, we're doing this. Now, sometimes I just want to talk on the phone and she gets mad at me. So she's become so used to being able to read facial expressions, know what's coming behind the tone of voice, know what's going on when the line goes silent. When you're working with clients that aren't right with you face to face, it becomes so much more important to connect in any way you can. And sometimes it's challenging. Our calls drop all the time, but at least we're putting in an effort and we get to see each other's face. And if nothing else, we get to laugh about stupid technology. We use Skype instead of Slack for our communication. So we create groups in Skype named after a client, and we use that for our chat. Are you loving Slack? You use Slack? Mm-hmm. A lot of people swear by Slack. I've been looking into it, but so far Skype is free, and that's just what we've been using. Google Hangouts we're using more and more. We do have GoToMeeting, which is very similar to what you just used, Zoom, with being able to do your presentations, but we can only have one person. It gets really expensive when you have a team. So Google Hangouts have been great for us. This little guy is in the Galapagos Islands. International business research. How do you find your clients? There are some great tools. Actually, the rules don't change that much from just finding clients here. Some of the things that we were talking about earlier about where do you find this client or that client, very similar. A few extra things that I'll point out though. HSBC has the International Business Guides. Just Google HSBC International Business Guides, and you will see these full guides on the economies and different things that are going on in different countries around the world. They're very in-depth. They're great if you're considering launching in another country or working with clients in another country. Meetup is global. So even just to do your market research, to go look in another country and see what they're meeting about. What are the topics that they might be interested in that you might be able to offer a product or service? Business coaching. There's a lot of business coaches around in our networking spheres. And what I encourage you to do, I have had some business coaches. The times I've had big breakthroughs have usually been with a business coach or with a mastermind. I also had a terrible experience with a business coach who didn't understand my values and my goals. I was clear that I wasn't looking to, I didn't need his help with sales and marketing. I'm a sales and marketing girl. What I needed was help with structures so that I could take on more business. And I wanted international business at higher retainers. And he just kept giving me these small business clients that could hardly afford my services, that were such a struggle, that were distracting me from my goals. And it was such a nightmare. So I really encourage you to work with a coach, join a mastermind program, and flesh it out first. I have 2 calls in the next 2 weeks because I'm going to be asking these coaches questions to see if they're right to help my business go to the next level. So if you're interested in working abroad, find somebody who's worked abroad. If you're interested in management, talk to someone who's worked in management. Just make sure you have a good match with the business coach, and it will be phenomenal. You'll have phenomenal results. I'm really just a big believer in getting training and knowledge. My tigers at the Singapore Zoo. Generating international leads, again, not that different than what you do locally to generate leads, but there are some nuances. There are chambers of commerce around the world, and if you join here, you can often get some benefits and get better connections with chambers of commerce around the world. Different business associations. I'm not sure if it's still here. There used to be a Latin business association here in Vancouver that was really strong. I think they had a big mining conference here every year. I attended it one time. So if you're looking to expand to Latin America, it would be great to join that group, to go to their conference. There are local conferences for international businesses, and there's also industry-related conferences all over the world. What a great excuse to travel. When I started going to our international conferences, I didn't set up a booth. I wanted to sit shoulder to shoulder with the people who I wanted to serve. And so I just went and I attended the conference, and I drummed up conversations. And that has been one of the #1 ways that I've built an international business, is by sitting and actually attending conferences. And then ultimately was able to speak at some of those conferences, and that is a great way to generate leads. Digital lead generation is the same. Inbound marketing, I believe, is the only way to build relationships. You were talking about how do you become a magnet and not just sell. And being a magnet is about producing content that's really relevant and interesting to your target audience and not necessarily selling them anything. So huge believer in inbound marketing. SEO, social media, digital ads, yes, you should be doing that here, or whether you're around the world, but there are differences. When you're here, even if you're on google.com, you're really on Google Canada. And there is google.co.uk in the UK, there's google. whatever in Hong Kong. They vary. But not only that, you might still log in there and they still know you're logging in from Canada. So this is where a VPN comes in really handy, where you can trick the network into thinking you are in another country. Just because your company shows up on the first page in search in Canada on Google doesn't mean it's going to show up when somebody does the search from Hong Kong or San Francisco. Even if they put Vancouver, BC, it still might not show up on the first page of search. It's different. Google results are different depending on where you're tapping in from. And Google isn't the be-all and end-all. Baidu, that's the paw print there. It is the fastest growing search engine. It's huge. Again, I think it's owned by Tencent as well. Do you know? I think so. It is in China primarily, and if you want to market to China, you need to have some understanding of Baidu. Expats commonly don't want to deal with Google because it can just be a pain in other countries, so they use Bing and Yahoo quite a bit. Naver, you've probably never heard of. It is based in Korea, and we actually just kind of fell on it because one of our clients was getting a bunch of traffic from there. But it is a great traffic generation tool. Every one of these search engines looks at their algorithms are a little bit different. So you have to know, depending on what your target market is, what their algorithms are of their search engines. Amazon is a great search engine and a great way to do research. Think about the book. If you felt so confident that you were going to write a book on your expertise, what would it be? Find that book. Look at the ratings. Look at the comments. Find out what your target audience is talking about, what their needs are, what they found valuable, or what they found was a challenge. People get entrepreneurial block for one and only one reason. It's not because they don't have passion. It's not because they aren't qualified. It's because they are afraid. Seth Godin. If you're thinking about working internationally, you might feel a little overwhelmed right now, and that's understandable. Get help, conquer your fears, and you'll be amazed what can come out. And I'm happy to talk to you about that. I will give you my contact information. Not everybody is cut out to travel, and I have had some nightmare stories. I booked a 4-star hotel that looked beautiful in the pictures, that was right on the beach. We got there, it was on a dirty, dusty road, about a mile or two from the beach through like jungle. It wasn't like a little trip down a trail. It was not a 4-star hotel. It was dirty. The power went out. Mike got violently ill from whatever we ate there. I got in the Bangkok airport, my travel agent neglected to tell me I needed a visa for Vietnam, and I was dressed to go into business class, and I'm in the Bangkok airport. I go to check in, and because I'm in business class, I don't need to be there that early, so I'm just sauntering up, and she's like, you need a visa. I took off my heels, and I'm running back and forth between the internet cafe thing, because for some reason I couldn't do this on my phone, back and forth between her, the desk, the check-in desk, and this cafe to get hold of this Vietnam agency that does your visas on the phone, figuring it out at the last minute. And just recently, booking my trip to San Francisco, after I've been looking and looking, I'm going cross-eyed on the stinking internet looking at flights instead of using my travel agent, and I booked the wrong day, like a month early. So, you know, stuff happens. And no matter how much you prepare and how much you plan and how many blogs you read and how many speakers you listen to, it's challenging. It might not be for you. Talk to people you know, talk to people who are in your target countries, and really understand even the culture. If you don't like curry, why would you work in India, right? There's different reasons why you might or might not want to work in different places or be away from your family. Thank you so much for your time.
Deborah, you've just shared a treasure trove of information that a normal human being could not possibly absorb, but you did a fabulous job. Luckily, the talk has been recorded so people can watch it many times. I'd also like to thank TELUS Business, the fastest and most reliable pure fiber broadband network in Metro Vancouver.